In 1964, the desegregation of Jonesboro, Louisiana High School was threatened by local authorities with fire hoses. 4 armed black men arrived with loaded shotguns. Without firing a shot, the mob dispersed and the authorities retreated. The students entered the school without incident. Those men were members of the Deacons for Defense, an armed citizens militia founded in Jonesboro, Louisiana. The Deacons were everyday citizens who by 1965 had organized into more than 50 chapters throughout the South in self-defense from the Ku Klux Klan.
In 1964, down in Louisiana, there were all types of demonstrations going on by freedom riders. Many times, the demonstrations would be met by armed white resistance. People were dying and being shot and intimidated because they were unarmed. And basically, because they were unarmed, they were also being denied the right to vote.
The Deacons protected civil rights workers for CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality, who were registering voters in Louisiana and Mississippi. They patrolled black neighborhoods and protected black churches where CORE was holding voting rights seminars.
These were regular, everyday people. They were not some paramilitary group. The thing that made them different is they were veterans from the Korean War. They were veterans from World War II. And so they did have the training and they did have the discipline that came from being veterans. Once the Klansmen and the white citizen consular and the deputy sheriff that was wearing the sheet at night learned that these Deacons for Defense would shoot back, then they were not as readily willing to go and pounce upon them in the wee hours of the morning.
Are you going to do something about it?
Because now
My bad, everybody. I just clicked it. Thank you for joining. Welcome to another episode of I Am the Revolution. I'm your host for this episode. I am Jay, or Compton Jay. And I love this video of the Deacons of Defense. I was going to say Deacons of Revolution. Just proving the ability of people in their own communities able to protect themselves. So defund the police on its way to abolish the police. That's where we'll start today. So I am the revolution. Today's episode is why communism. So I'll throw up the graphic very quickly. We haven't done a I Am Revolution episode. I can't even tell you. It has to be several months. I think whitewashing Martin Luther King was the last one that I did. But this is today's. And I wanted to make it a point to make sure we included black faces on this graphic, because it's a lot of people that don't understand, that think that there's a lot of black communists. So W.E.B. Du Bois, that's actual picture. A lot of people seen the art, sort of like the art photo of him. And then, of course, that's the great Paul Robeson on the left here, left of Karl Marx. And yeah, so why communism? And we're going to cover this or answer this from the perspective of somebody that does not know what communism is, or maybe have been propagandized against it. And it's going to be very basic. So this is not any way a sort of deep dive into communism. We're not going to be doing that. This is sort of just a broad perspective to give someone so that it gives them it entices them to want to go read more. Now the source we're going to use today is Marxist Paul. He's on YouTube. Marxist Paul. That's the source we're going to be using today. Actually, let me bring it up right now. Let's just go to YouTube. So Marxist Paul, I'm going to show you his page so you can go there, support him. And where is, okay, so let's go here. Marxist Paul is here. All right, so here is Marxist Paul. Can everybody see that on the screen? Yeah. So yeah, go support him. Has some great sort of educational videos. But what's great about him is that he does it in short, what is his phrase he uses, easily digestible. So it's very concise, short sort of videos. It's sort of to be the carrot that draws you to want to go learn and study what communism is, because communism can't be explained like in a video like this. So, or the videos that I found, they're literally 2-3 hours. So yeah. All right, so let's do a chat check and let's do a like check. Actually, I'll have to do a like check. We're at 100 viewers, so 75 likes. If we can push to 75 likes. And let's see who's in the chat. Oh, here's a suggestion here. Please read more theory on the show. A Marxist pamphlet on Mondays and a theory-packed Thursday. So that is so let me just, so that kind of allows me to explain what our I Am the Revolution series is. We wanted to put together a series of videos where people can go and say, I don't know anything. I'm a liberal. I'm ready to be deprogrammed. Let me go somewhere and hear some actual information about either revolutionary theory or revolutionary leaders, like historical leaders, or revolutionary strategy, historical strategy, stuff like that. That's what this series is aimed to target. So yeah, I take the point. Let's go back up to the top here. Because communism is cool. Because communism is the only system that guarantees dignity and autonomy for all people. I'm assuming that means for all people. If we want algorithmism, I always have a problem pronouncing that word, then we need communism, which will come after Boonism, ABC. So I take the point. But isms are communism sometimes also have a problem saying that too. I think Russia, China communists still keep state capitalism though, so that they didn't work. I think Russia, China communists. Well, Russia and China aren't communists. So we have to understand what we hear and digest about capitalism, about communism, is shaped by capitalism. They tell us what we to think. So when we think of communism, people go, well, China's communist and Russia's communist. They're actually not. In their name, it says socialist. They consider themselves socialists. So, and he's going to go into this actually in one of the videos. I think he talks about the communist states of China and Russia. Yeah, he was talking about propaganda, I think, and he was explaining how communist state is an oxymoron because communism is a stateless, is by definition stateless. So there's no such thing as a communist state. It is capitalism's propaganda, trying to propaganda the understanding of communism. So I think that's enough of a chat check. Let's get to the video. Now, the video is part of a series. So there's 6 videos we're going to cover today. You may not notice, actually you will, because he'll kind of say stuff that'll give you an indication that. But I remember I was watching, I was like, wait a minute, I thought this was 6 videos, and I didn't even know they had went through. I thought he was just talking on and on. But anyway, it's called Socialism 101. And we're going to watch from the beginning. And the first one is Why Communism. Now, I'm going to show you the playlist here so that you can go on your own and watch. So we're going to watch 1 through 6, or we're going to cover, because we're going to actually stop and talk. So why communism? What is communism? What is a mode of production? The difference between personal and private property. That's one of my favorite videos, because that's the one that kind of covers like a lot of the pushback that the propaganda people hear. So that's a good video to me, or that I like that video. And then video 5 is what is capitalism, and then the video 6 is what is socialism. Now, we may cover number 7. We'll see how the conversation goes. But where we're going to start a different video, a different stream on a different day, is when he gets to what is Marxism. That's what we don't want that. We want that to be a separate sort of video. So now, again, this is not a deep dive. This is just giving a broad perspective, a broad understanding of the concept, so that you can go search for yourself. And he actually also provides, in the comments, he also provides study guides for you to go. So if you're interested, go to his videos. You can find the study guide, and I'm going to put links to his videos in the description when I'm done. I don't have it there yet. So I'm going to provide he has a study guide also in the comments of his video. So all great information for those that want to accept it and just kind of, I mean, even if you want to brush up on it. I love it. He is Irish, so Irish accent, but it's very understandable. It's not like anything you can't understand. So let's get into the first video. What I just click on? Okay, yeah, there we go. I'll try to make sure I skip commercials, but if he's advertising for himself, I want you to patronize him for the work he's doing. So I'll let him that part play, or maybe at least have it in the background where you can get his Patreon link and all that stuff, because we do want you to support him. So let's get started. Oops, accidentally put so let me start it over here. I meant to make sure the sound was on. My bad, everybody. All right, so let's get started.
This video was made in collaboration with Second Thought. We made an accompanying video over on his channel about why so many young people are becoming socialists, which you'll find linked in the description box below. So get over there after this and subscribe for great weekly socialist videos. Right, I'm going to level with you. The world is fecked. Completely, utterly fecked. Young people living through the second major economic crisis of our lifetimes during the COVID-19 pandemic? Shite. Being forced to work in the gig economy or other precarious jobs with no contracts? Shite. Worker product.
Now, I'm laughing because I'm wondering if some of you are having the same reaction to me when I first heard him say shite. So I looked up the word, and of course the English dictionary will say it's just a different version of the word shit. But I believe it's in Irish, in Ireland or in Irish language, it's the same thing, because I looked it up and I typed in Irish to get sort of an Irish definition, and I don't know if it was the wrong website, but it kind of gave me the same thing, that it kind of meant the same thing. So I'm thinking it's saying shit. So it's sort of saying damn or something like that. I'm thinking. If I'm wrong, if you're Irish, you know what he means, just put it in the comments. I'll toss it up. But yeah, so yeah, you laugh too. I thought it's all yes. I thought it was funny, pretty funny. Yeah, it's pretty funny. So let's listen. But I think that's what it is, but we're gonna continue. But another thing, when he said, just think about those in the I mean, it's several generations going through this, where, let me think, you were born in 01. No, let's say you're born in 95 or something like that. So you have 9/11, you have 08, 7 years, you have 9/11 and 01, then 7 years later you have, before Obama, the housing crisis. Then you have the pandemic. In between, you've had several problems in between with the police state. You have this massive, but it's just to be living like as a young person, 35 and under, just, growing up, this has got to be like, wow, just one thing after another. So he makes that point in the beginning.
Productivity increasing steadily for nearly half a century while real wages have remained stagnant? Shite. At the same time, housing, healthcare, education, and all of life's basic necessities getting more and more expensive and inaccessible for normal working people? Shite. No clear end in sight for this progressively deteriorating situation emerging from the continuing boom and bust cycles of our economy? Shite. Skyrocketing rates of mental illness among young people connected to all this? Shite. Impending climate catastrophe ensuring our days are numbered? Load of shite. So, you can see why I say the world's fecked. But the good news is that we can pinpoint exactly what's causing all these problems. And not only that, we've also got the solution. Welcome to Socialism 101, a series designed to help educate people with no prior knowledge on the basics of socialism and communism from an explicitly Marxist-Leninist and Marxist-Leninist-Maoist perspective with short and easily digestible videos. If this sounds interesting to you, then go ahead and hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell below.
Go and subscribe to Marxist Paul. Great channel. Shout out to Marxist Paul. Thank you for providing this tutorial so we can discuss for this stream.
Do be a star and give this video a little share around on social media, Twitter, Discord, Facebook, etc., as the YouTube algorithm's been going really hard on this channel lately for some reason. I can't imagine why a capitalist corporation like Google, which owns YouTube, would be going hard on an openly pro-communist channel like this one. It's a real head scratcher, but look, it is what it is. Do you remember all that fecked stuff I mentioned earlier? Do you want to know the main culprit behind it? The system of capitalism. And look, that's not to say that capitalism hasn't done some good stuff historically. It was a hugely progressive step forward from feudalism, but no system lasts forever. And if we want to solve the aforementioned problems, then it's essential that we recognise that capitalism's day has come and passed. Just like...
So I'm going to put that on the screen at... Oops. What the... Is it going to stay? Anyway, capitalism's day has come and passed. I'm trying to think back. When can that phrase not be true? Capitalism day has come and passed. Because I know half my ancestry, the African ancestry, and then I have indigenous ancestry, but I know we could say capitalism wasn't great since the 1600s for us. So, but we can absolutely see the imploding, the collapsing of capitalism eating itself right now. We can absolutely see that. And maybe you can say at the Atlantic slave trade was maybe the height of modern day capitalism. So maybe we can say that. So let's continue.
That we recognise that capitalism's day has come and passed. Just like we couldn't reform feudalism to solve its inherent problems, we can't reform capitalism for the same reason. The day is past for patching up the capitalist system. It must go. It's time to move on to the next stage of historical development, socialism. Now, I know what you're going to ask next. If we're trying to achieve socialism, then why the feck are we talking about communism? The big bad scary C words that we've been taught to hate all our lives. Well, partly because it's fun to ruffle the feathers of the right-wing establishment. But more importantly because, while generally well-intentioned, no other progressive movement has ever actually succeeded in meaningfully challenging global capitalism. Ever. We've tried the social democratic route of voting the right progressive candidate into office, and time again it fails and demonstrates.
That's where we're currently in, the social democratic way of trying to solve capitalism's problem. And that no one can honestly say that has epically failed. No, I mean, can you really say that has failed? Now, you can say it's failed and you want to keep trying, but you cannot dispute that has been an epic fail.
Social democratic route of voting the right progressive candidate into office, and time again it fails and demonstrates itself as being incapable of solving the problems that capitalism creates. Why? Because every state exists to serve the interests of its ruling class.
Every state exists to serve the interests of its ruling class. So whether that's the individual states of the United States or just the concept of a state, meaning the government, so federally also. Who is the federal government serving but the ruling class, the national ruling, or actually the international ruling class? And when you look at your local government, ask the same question. So yeah, let's continue. I don't want to give too much critique and kind of devolve from what he's talking about. So let's get back.
In our case, the capitalist class.
I said critique, I meant to say analysis.
As long as the capitalist state remains intact, no amount of piecemeal reform, nor elected good guys, will ever be able to overcome the fact that the system is specifically designed to maintain the very capitalist rule that's destroying our planet. The whole thing's set up for us to fail. It's fact. Other progressives recognise this too. To their credit, there have been anarchist uprisings which genuinely sought to overthrow capitalism and which have had some success. But the movement we call communism, specifically Marxism-Leninism and Marxism-Leninism Maoism, based on the historical materialist understanding of social historical development, has progressed us further along the path to complete liberation than anything else ever has in history. Not only have we brought about real-life socialism, but we've also progressed further beyond that first step into fighting back against the revisionist backslide into capitalism to maintain the socialist road and continue the advance towards a stateless, classless, moneyless society. Despite many errors along the way and the innumerable criticisms we must have of previous socialist experiments, the communist movement has still advanced the liberation of all working people further than anything else in history. And for that, in my opinion, it's worth carrying forward the torch of
the liberation of all working people. I was trying to get it stopped before he continued after that, but the liberation of all working people. Just think about the number of people when we're talking just raw numbers. Think about all of the global south that's doing all of this working. They're extracting all of this exploited labor. Liberation of those people. Think about the liberation of the people in Palestine. So the liberation of the proletariat, the working class. So that is very important. And let's continue. Oops.
The communist movement has still advanced the liberation of all working people further than anything else in history. And for that, in my opinion, it's worth carrying forward the torch of scientific socialism and the revolutionary communist tradition. To put it simply, communism works, and we've got 150 years of proletarian struggle to prove it. If you'd like to learn more about this movement, about working class revolutionary history, and about the scientific socialist path forward to collective liberation, then this series is for you. It doesn't assume any prior knowledge, so if you're still scratching your head after this video asking questions like, What is communism, or what is socialism? But you're intrigued and want to learn more, then you're in the right place. We'll start simple with the basics of Marxism, explaining all the terminology and jargon, including a lot of the terminology used in this video, then gradually ramp things up through more intermediate and then later advanced level theory. We're going to analyse the problems of capitalism and class society more broadly, how we found ourselves neck deep in this capitalist heap of shite. But we're not just going to diagnose the problems.
So you see how he used the word shite? The capitalist heap of shite. So I'm thinking it's the same thing. Capitalist heap of shit is the same expression. So I think we got confirmation there.
We're also going to map out a clear path forward to overcome them, in line with what's been uncovered through the concrete historical experience of working class liberation struggle, all the way from the Paris Commune of 1871 to the ongoing revolutionary people's wars being waged in places like the Philippines right now on this very day. Thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you found it useful in one way or another. If you're able to support this work, then please consider donating €1 or $1 per month over on Patreon or a once-off donation.
So I'll leave that up to play so you can get the links there. But it's about to go through the special things, and we're going to cover it now in the next video. The reason I'm keeping this sound on, because I am expecting an important, I guess I can turn it down. I can at least do that part. Yeah. But now we're going to go to the next video, which is what is communism? So let's click that one and then pop back up here. Let the commercial play. Of course, capitalism has to make you known, and let something be known to consumers that something is on sale. So I love when he gets to the private property segment, because it talks more about property, and it's such, to me, it's so eye-opening. It can be eye-opening for a lot of people who are misunderstanding socialism. So let's continue with Marxist Paul.
Communism. There's a lot of excitement surrounding the term, though usually as an insult rather than an accurate political descriptor. You've probably heard people like Joe Biden called one, definitely Bernie Sanders, and maybe even Donald Trump somehow. But what is communism beyond this ill-defined boogeyman that you were taught to hate? Isn't it just when no iPhone, Vuvuzuela, 300 Gorillion like you've read in the YouTube comments? Well, let's find out. Welcome to Socialism 101, a series designed to help educate people with no prior knowledge on the basics of socialism and communism from an explicitly Marxist-Leninist perspective. Now, there's a lot of misinformation being spread about communism by those on both the political right and the political left. So this series seeks to demystify and clarify what it is exactly that we Marxist-Leninists and Marxist-Leninist Maoists believe in short, easily digestible videos. After this 101 series is finished, there's going to be an intermediate Socialism 201 and then an advanced Socialism 301. Now, if this sounds interesting to you, then go ahead and hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell below. On that note, how are you doing? My name's Paul and I am an Irish communist. But what exactly do I mean when I call myself a communist? Frederick Engels, the magnificently bearded co-author of the Communist Manifesto, wrote that communism is the doctrine of the prerequisites for the emancipation for the proletariat.
So I'm going to put that quote back up on the screen. See if I can get it right this time. Looks like I did. So let's read that again. Frederick Engels, I have a friend named Frederick. Communism is the doctrine of the prerequisite for the emancipation of the proletariat. I think that's a great thing. That sentence, I mean, sounds beautiful. Communism is the doctrine, is the way, the doctrine of the prerequisite. Like, it's teaching you, these are what you have to do, the prerequisite to even emancipate the working class. So let's continue.
Requisites for the emancipation for the proletariat. A theoretical toolbox that clearly maps out how to achieve complete liberation for all working people. And this isn't just by securing free healthcare or increasing the minimum wage. In 1845, Karl Marx wrote that we call communism the real movement which abolishes the present state of things.
Karl Marx, we call communism the real movement which abolishes the present state of things. So, actually, let's continue, and we'll go to some comments a little bit.
Things. The aim is a fundamental transformation of society, which once and for all ends the exploitation of man by man. And we call the people involved in this project communists. But what's our end goal? To take away everyone's toothbrushes? No, you keep your personal property, please. The goal of communism as a movement, simply put, is to create a stateless, classless, moneyless society. That is to say, a communist society. Now, how we get there is a matter of debate among the various different sections of the political left. Some, such as anarchists, believe we can have a revolution and establish this kind of society immediately thereafter. Others, including Marxists like myself, believe that we'll need a transitional stage between capitalism and communism, a stage called socialism. But hang on a minute, what about communist states? Don't these communist states like the USSR and China contradict everything that's been said so far? Well, communist state is a term pretty much used exclusively by those in the Western world. These countries never called themselves communist states. They called themselves socialists. It's in the name, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics.
Wow, so here's the video that I pointed out that he's actually going to bring that up, where the concept that these are communist states, they're just simply, that's just not accurate, and that's what the Western world wants to label through propaganda. So let's go back some more. All right here.
Debate among the various different sections of the political left. Some, such as anarchists, believe we can have a revolution and establish this kind of society immediately thereafter. Others, including Marxists like myself, believe that we'll need a transitional stage between capitalism and communism, a stage called socialism. But hang on a minute, what about communist states? Don't these communist states like the USSR and China contradict everything that's been said so far? Well, communist state is a term pretty much used exclusively by those in the Western world. These countries never called themselves communist states. They called themselves socialists. It's in the name, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. The term communist state is also an oxymoron, given that communism is, as we mentioned earlier, a stateless, classless, moneyless society. So, yeah, nice job, Western academic big brains. Now, rather than just seeing communism as a kind of society that we might implement in this country or in that country, it's more useful to understand it as a stage of historical development. We Marxists divide history into a number of stages corresponding to different modes of production. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about what exactly we mean by modes of production in the next video. But for now, let's briefly look at the different stages of historical development that we can identify. The first main stage that we can identify is called primitive communism. Think hunter-gatherer societies.
Now, this is when I'm speaking to people who don't have a grasp or actually have a like something bad or some sort of negative connotation or understanding, not through them, because somebody's told them or they've learned this, right? This is what I say. I say, do you understand that humans, communism is a natural thing that humans have been doing before any sort of established written culture. Living with your family in smaller groups, 3 or 4 or 5 or other families, helping to sustain your own family. That's primitive communism, and this is something I use it with my wife because she's not as left as I am. So I'm like primitive communism. Just think of that. Think of what Africans used to do way back in the day. Like that's all we're talking about. And when you look at it in the bare bones, I don't mean, of course, there's a lot of theory behind it. I'm talking about when you look at the basic innate concept of it. It's working together that for everybody to sustain each other. So that's what that means. So it's not that's what that means, but that's why I like to use primitive communism as a way when discussing with somebody who's not familiar with communism or has a bad understanding or propaganda about it. So yeah,
The second stage of historical developments that we identify is slave society, such as those seen in ancient Greece and in ancient Rome. Following this, we see the development of feudalism, such as in Europe after the fall of the Roman Empire. After feudalism, we arrive at capitalism, such as in the modern United States of America. Beyond capitalism, we arrive at socialism, such as what we saw in the USSR and in China. Finally, after a full epoch of socialism, we will arrive at communism. But what does communism actually look like? What will life be like for the average person in the age of communism? In communist society, where nobody has one exclusive sphere of activity, but each...
So what, he didn't say it, but this is a quote from Karl Marx. I just wanted to make sure I said it. I was trying to catch it before, but I'm always late. Go ahead.
In communist society, where nobody has one exclusive sphere of activity, but each can become accomplished in any branch he wishes, society regulates the general production, and thus makes it possible for me to do one thing today and another tomorrow. To hunt in the morning, fish in the afternoon, rear cattle in the evening, criticize after dinner. Just as I have a mind without ever becoming hunter, fisherman, herdsman, or critic. It'll be a society of abundance with equitable distribution for all. People will work as they're able and receive everything that they require, from each according to his ability to each according to his needs. Sound utopian? Too good to be true? Well, utopianism is assuming that the planet can sustain capitalism, a system which requires infinite growth on a planet of finite resources. Communists are simply realists who understand that the choice before us is not just between socialism or barbarism, but between socialism or extinction.
That is really that is really why communists and usually socialists believe that it's just a natural progression, because the other choice is extinction. Like like capitalists can fight against this progress, but it's either that or extinction. That's literally the choice. Sorry, everybody. Got a cricket.
Now, what exactly does socialism entail as the transitional stage to communism? Well, if you'd like to know the answer to that question and more, then stick around. We're going to be fleshing this out over the coming weeks and months ahead. Today, we've looked at what communism means as a movement, an ideology, and as a stage in historical development. For more, check the sources and resources in the description box below. Hopefully this video has helped to clarify the term for you a little bit beyond the usual communism as when big government and no food. Thank you for watching this video. If you're able to support this work, then please consider donating €1 or $1 per month over on Patreon.
Absolutely support Marxist Paul, and he's shouting out his special thanks. So we're gonna move to the third video. Wow, this is moving fast. Third video here, and the third video is what is a mode of production? Socialism 101. And again, in the descriptions of these videos, there's links to study guides. So you can, if you want to go more in depth, there's links. This is sort of just to whet the palate to gain interest for you to go and do that deep dive study. Oh wow, she's got real deep in there. Let's skip. Let's get back to Paul here.
Time working for bosses who really just don't give a shit about us beyond our ability to produce profits for them. If we could instead spend our time doing things that actually matter to us. If, in other words, we lived under communism. Well, that's the dream, and we will get there sooner or later. But socialism isn't just going to happen because we think it's this nice, fanciful idea. Rather, socialism is going to happen because there are conflicts within the capitalist mode of production itself that necessitate a progression beyond its limitations. But what is this internal conflict that necessitates socialism? Well, if we want to understand that, we need to first ask, what is a mode of production? Today, we're going to take a look at the answer to this question, which will undoubtedly reveal why communism is truly inevitable. Welcome back to Socialism 101, a series designed to help educate people with no prior knowledge on the basics of socialism and communism from an explicitly Marxist-Leninist and Marxist-Leninist-Maoist perspective, with short and hopefully easily digestible videos. If this sounds interesting to you, then go ahead and hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell below. Now,
Like I said, shout out to Marxist Paul. Subscribe to him for educational videos. This is not my only source, but you want to have different sources because people have different perspectives, and read also. This is just to whet the palate of those that are maybe interested in socialism or communism, or just like, what is this? Why is this becoming more popular?
Now, we often hear the term capitalist mode of production, and we may think that this is just a synonym for capitalism, a fancier way of saying it. But if we prod and poke this term just a little bit more, we'll see that it in and of itself reveals the unsustainable nature of this system. So let's do exactly that. Get the notepads ready. At its most basic form, mode of production simply means the way things are produced, such as the necessities of life like food, housing, clothing, medical equipment, Nintendo, etc. Modes of production within any given society are comprised of two key aspects. One, the productive forces, and two, the relations of production. Have you written that down? No? You're going to regret that later. The first key aspect of the mode of production, the productive forces, is comprised of labour power and the means of production. Now, labour power is not just work, but rather the capacity or the ability to do work. To better understand this, think about the time when you're at work versus the time when you're actually doing work. If you work for an hourly wage, then you're selling your labour power to your boss. Every hour, you're selling your capacity to do work. It usually doesn't matter whether you work harder or you do less actual work, you're likely still going to get the same hourly wage. This is because you're not selling your labour directly, you're selling your labour power, which, when you check the notes...
This is a very good point. I'm going to replay this again, but this is a very, very good point in understanding the value in your labor, this point here. So I'm going to let it play through, and then I'm going to restart it.
That you're definitely taking down, you'll remember is your capacity or ability to do work. And this causes a conflict between you and your boss because you're going to want to do as little work as possible, making it a better deal for you, while they're going to want you to do as much work as possible within that time frame, making it a better and more profitable deal for them. Now, the means of production refers to everything that's required.
So before he gets to the means of production explanation, let's listen to this part because it's very important. A lot of parts here are going to be important, but this is one I want to repeat here.
Do less actual work, you're likely still going to get the same hourly wage. This is because you're not selling your labor directly, you're selling your labor power, which, when you check the notes that you're definitely taking down, you'll remember is your capacity or ability to do work. And this causes a conflict between you and your boss because you're going to want to do as little work as possible, making it a better deal for you, while they're going to want you to do as much work as possible within that time frame, making it a better and more profitable deal for them. Now, the means of production refers to everything that's required in order to produce, including instruments of production, like the tools, machinery, and buildings in which we carry out our work, as well as subjects of production, which includes natural materials like iron ore, and also materials that have been filtered through previous labour, like that iron ore in its extracted form, which we call raw materials. So when you hear extremely based people saying, seize the means of production, that's a call for workers to take control of all that good stuff. The tools, the factories, the raw materials, etc. And to use them for the common good, rather than to further line the pockets of wealthy private capitalists who do none of the actual work. You still with me? I know there was a lot of terminology there, and I know it got maybe a little bit complex, but the good news is that it's all going to be worth it in the end, and we're already over the worst of it. So you can basically relax now. Okay, so now that we've talked a little bit about the productive forces, let's take a look at the second key aspect of modes of production, relations of production. We can easily understand this by simply asking, how do we relate to the process of production? Are we workers in a business generating profit for someone else? Or are we the owners of that business who do little more than simply hoover up the profits that are generated by workers? Under the capitalist mode of production, the relations of production separate society primarily into two classes, based workers, the proletariats, and cringe capitalists, the bourgeoisie. We either relate to production as workers or we relate to production as owners, more specifically, owners of the means of production. Now, there are various subclasses or strata among these two groups, as well as some other classes that we can get into in a later video dedicated specifically to class. But for now, we'll focus on the two main classes of capitalism, the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. Rather than being a system that benefits everybody equally, the The relations of production that we see in capitalism are set up so as to primarily benefit the capitalists to the detriment of the worker. Make no mistake, the capitalist's gain is the worker's loss. The profit they're making is the wealth that you're creating. Never forget that. Now, we'll talk more about the exact...
I hope I'm not going to be... I don't think I'm going to be doing this again. I've watched this before. I didn't know. This really sticks out to me about this proletariat part here. So I want this to play again. Sorry. But I feel like this is a very important point to restate.
Technology there, and I know it got maybe a little bit complex, but the good news is that it's all going to be worth it in the end, and we're already over the worst of it. So you can basically relax now. Okay, so now that we've talked a little bit about the productive forces, let's take a look at the second key aspect of modes of production, relations of production. We can easily understand this by simply asking, how do we relate to the process of production? Are we workers in a business generating profit for someone else? Or are we the owners of that business who do little more than simply hoover up the profits that are generated by workers? Under the capitalist mode of production, the relations of production separate society primarily into two classes: based workers, the proletariat, and cringe capitalists, the bourgeoisie. We either relate to production as workers or we relate to production as owners, more specifically, owners of the means of production. Now, there are various subclasses or strata among these two groups, as well as some other classes that we can get into in a later video dedicated specifically to class. But for now, we'll focus on the two main classes of capitalism, the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. Rather than being a system that benefits everybody equally, the relations of production that we see in capitalism are set up so as to primarily benefit the capitalists to the detriment of the worker. Make no mistake, the capitalist's gain is the worker's loss. The profit they're making is the wealth that you're creating. Never.
I'm going to pause with that on the screen. The profit they are making is the wealth you're creating. There is literally no profit that Bezos is making himself. All of the billions that he has was created by workers. Every single cent. So that's very important. The profit they are making is the wealth you are creating. So when you're seeing all these companies, AT&T made this, ExxonMobil made this year, Amazon made this. Those are workers who made that money. This is workers generating this money. All profits are unpaid wages. That's the best way to say that. All profits, and thanks, Zayden. It's a regular. All profits are unpaid wages. That's how you have to look at it. So, like, just think about the pay that the workers of Amazon would have if Jeff Bezos was only paid $1 million and all of that other money he had to give to employees. Imagine. So let's continue.
Never forget that. Now, we'll talk more about the exact process through which the exploitation of labor takes place in a later video specifically about the labor theory of value. But it should already be starting to become clear that there's a definite conflict between the productive forces on one hand and the relations of production on the other, between the interests of labor and the interests of capital, between the working class proletariat and the capitalist bourgeoisie. This conflict must be resolved. It's not going away. And in fact, we see that this conflict is actually intensifying as technology develops. With automation, countless jobs are going to disappear. The development of the productive forces will make the current relations of production upon which capitalism relies completely untenable, with wealth and resources concentrating into fewer and fewer capitalist hands, leaving us, the masses, out of work and unable to access life's necessities. And as nobody will have any money, this in turn is going to mean that the capitalists won't be able to sell their products to anyone. So now we're beginning to see how unstable and ultimately self-destructive this system is. And we're just scratching the surface. We're going to talk a lot more about how capitalism sows the seeds of its own destruction in upcoming videos. But don't worry, it's not all doom and gloom. We'll also talk about how we can solve these problems. I'll give you a hint. Class struggle. Lots and lots of class struggle. Today we've looked at the meaning of mode of production, including its two key components, the productive forces and the relations of production. We've looked at how labour power and the means of production constitute the productive forces, and the way in which the based workers and the cringe capitalists embody the relations of production under capitalism. Most importantly, we've looked at how the conflict between productive forces and relations of production forms the economic basis for social revolution, inevitably propelling us from capitalism and into socialism, making our apparently utopian dreams into a concrete material reality. Next time, the difference between personal property and private property. Get those toothbrushes ready. Thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you found it useful in some way or another. If you're able to...
Yeah, I think this is the video I said is one of, it's not the favorite. I like a lot of different ones, but this is one of the ones, not favorite. I think a better way of saying it is one of the ones that I feel answers a lot of the popular questions about socialism, and that's private property ownership. So that's why I like this video. So let's let that play, and then let's get to it. I'm gonna restart it here. Pause it. All right, let's go.
Now, I can't actually see you, given that this is YouTube and all. So you could be wearing a tuxedo, or you could be wearing nothing at all. Stupid sexy Flanders. But bear with me on this one, so we can play out this scenario. I'm going to assume that you, my very attractive friend, are wearing a hat. But not just any hat. The most beautiful hat I've ever seen. Naturally, I'm extremely jealous and want one of my own. Nice hat, I tell you. How much are you going to sell it to me for? To which you respond, very reasonably, like a normal person would. Beck off, Paul. This is my personal property. I'm not selling this. This hat is to be used, not exchanged. Take that commodity trade nonsense elsewhere. As you can imagine, I'm understandably heartbroken at having been shut down like that, and I run home with my tail between my legs. All dreams of ever owning such a beautiful hat like that myself, having been crushed by your cruel, cruel words. But on the way back, I pass by a shop and I see that very same beautiful hat in the window. Excited, I run inside and I pick it up. But the shop owner is alarmed and sternly warns me, "Put that hat down. It's the company's private property. If you want it, you're going to have to pay for it." Now, naturally, I'm baffled. I was assured that this beautiful hat was personal property that was meant to be used. Now I'm being told that it's private property, that if I want access to its warm embrace, then I'm going to have to exchange money for it. How can it be that the purpose of this beautiful hat for you is use, while for the shop owner its purpose is exchange? That it can be either personal property or private property depending on who owns it and what they're doing with it. Well, let's get to the bottom of this. Welcome to Socialism 101, a series designed to help educate people with no prior knowledge on the basics of socialism and communism from an explicitly Marxist-Leninist and Marxist-Leninist-Maoist perspective, with short and hopefully easily digestible videos. If this sounds interesting to you, then go ahead and hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell below. So we've run into a little bit of difficulty here. This beautiful hat seems to be both personal property and private property. It has use value in its usefulness as a protector of my head against the cruelty of the wind and the rain, but it also has exchange value in that it can be exchanged for a certain price on the market. Well, in fact, this is one of the most basic building blocks of the capitalist system, the commodity. And the key feature of commodities is that they possess both use value and exchange value. They can be both personal property and private property. However, they're produced primarily for exchange as private property to make profits for capitalists, and secondarily produced for use to become personal property. This goes for all commodities produced under the capitalist mode of production, from food to clothes to, you guessed it, Nintendo. If you look at the place you're living right now, whether that's an apartment, a house, or anything else, for you this has use value or usefulness. For you, it's shelter. It keeps you warm, protected. You get to relax with friends and family, get drunk, talk socialism, etc. But your home likely wasn't created primarily for that purpose. It was created primarily to be the private property of the bourgeoisie that would be exchanged and make them more money. Okay, so now we can see that there's a fundamental difference emerging between...
So, in other words, the homes are built to sell, not homes are... This is why we have homeless. Because if we're building homes for use, where we be building homes for the people who need a home. Use. Where we have now corporations or, capitalists are building homes to exchange for money. this is why they sit empty while we have unhoused people still being unhoused.
Between how the working class proletariat engages with personal property, your home as a place to live, and how the capitalist bourgeoisie engages with private property, that home they acquired solely to make profit. In fact, let's take a moment to clearly map out these differences. In the last video, we talked a little bit about labour power. Now, this is also a commodity in that it possesses both use value in its ability to produce, as well as exchange value as capitalists purchase it from us for a certain price in the forms of wages and salaries. For most working class people, we sell our labour power, or commodity, C, to bosses. In return for this, our bosses give us a little bit of money, M. We then take this money that we receive from our wage or salary and use that to purchase commodities, C, for us to use, like food, clothes, toothbrushes, etc. This is the CMC circuit that the working class engages in. We have our commodity, labour power, that we sell for money, and with that money we purchase more commodities, CMC. Capitalists, on the other hand, operate not just on a CMC circuit, but on an inverted MCM circuit. The capitalist circuit begins with money, M, which they use to purchase commodities, C, primarily labour power, in order to get back more money, M. And importantly, that final M includes the initial sum of money invested plus profit that has been generated through labour power. We can signify the presence of this added profit with M prime. Capitalists can then take this profit and use it to purchase more commodities, to get even more profit, to purchase even more commodities, and so on and so on. Okay, take a moment to give yourself an little pat on the back because you've just learned the general formula of capital, MCM. Now, this is the simplified version of the capitalist circuit. There are a few more steps in between that we'll return to in a later video. But we can already see from this that the proletariat on the CMC circuit and the bourgeoisie on the MCM circuit interact quite differently with property. The proletariat acquires personal property exclusively for us to use. The bourgeoisie acquires private property for exchange in order to make profits. Communists seek to abolish private property, not personal property. We seek to abolish exchange value and instead produce entirely for use. To, as the old saying goes.
So that's very key to understanding when people are talking about private property. You're going to take my toothbrush. No, we are looking to get rid of exchange value, not use. So that has nothing to do with your possessions. We should be producing for the use of people, not producing in order to sell for profit. That is the concept. So let's continue.
Abolish the commodity form. Now, onto the ever-pressing question of toothbrushes. Yes, you get to keep your feckin' toothbrush for personal use. But if there are capitalists who are producing them for profit, for exchange, then you better believe that we're going to hunt them down and redistribute those toothbrushes for the good of the people. The people's toothbrushes. Today we've looked at the differences between personal property and private property. As a general rule, personal property is that property that we possess in order to use value. Private property, on the other hand, is property that's possessed for the purpose of making profits, exchange value.
So that, to me, this is one of the clearest, concise, to the point definitions, because really I have found that this has been the biggest issue of misunderstanding of socialism is private property versus personal property. And this is the one that I feel capitalists exploit as the part as being misunderstood. You have to understand from the perspective. So when capitalists are saying, oh, they want to abolish private property, what are they talking about? They're talking about they're abolishing their ability to make profit, exchange value. We're not abolishing anything for the proletariat. But the way they frame it, they want you to think that somebody's going to come in a red suit and take your toothbrush and take your, everything in your house. That's use value. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about abolishing exchange value. Let's continue.
We've also mapped out the ways in which workers and capitalists relate to commodities, either on the proletarian CMC circuit or the bourgeois MCM circuit, which is the general formula of capital. Next up, that burning question of our time, what is capitalism? Thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you found it useful.
Yeah, so we're going to be going to the next video here. And yeah, let's see, next video. We're almost getting to the end. Our final video will be what is socialism, and we are on what is capitalism. Yeah, let's go. Oh, by the way, we got another stream at 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. We're going to be analyzing auditing the progressive Democrats, talking about each one in that graphic that you see. So, oops, I forgot to unmute it. I keep doing that. Okay, so let's now go. What is capitalism?
Easy. Capitalism is freedom and democracy. Unless we try to use that freedom and democracy to vote in a people-centered government that challenges capitalism in any way. Like in Chile in 1973, when Salvador Allende, the democratically elected socialist president, was ousted from office and replaced by the fascist Augusto Pinochet in a CIA-backed coup. But don't get me wrong, capitalism is freedom and democracy for some people, just not us. Democracy for an insignificant minority. Democracy for the rich. That is the democracy of capitalist society. Normal working people don't get a say on how our workplaces are run, the places where we spend most of our waking lives. We don't get a say in what homes are built where and who gets to live in them. In fact, we don't get a meaningful say in the day-to-day runnings of our societies at all. The only thing we do get is the opportunity to choose a representative of the ruling class once every 4 or 5 years to administer capitalist rule. And if we attempt to venture outside those narrow confines, then you better believe it'll be time for the international capitalist class to mount a CIA-backed coup to bring us even more freedom and democracy. So, let's be honest. Capitalism? Not all it's cracked up to be. Now, what the feck is it? Well, let's find out. Welcome to Socialism 101, a series designed to help educate people with no prior knowledge on the basics of socialism and communism from an explicitly Marxist-Leninist and Marxist-Leninist-Maoist perspective, with short and hopefully easily digestible videos. If this sounds interesting to you, then go ahead and hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell below. Now, so far in this series, we've learned that capitalism is a stage of historical development between feudalism and socialism. We've also talked a bit about capitalism.
Let me put that back up on the screen there. Stages of historical development: primitive capitalism, slave society, feudalism, capitalism, and the normal progression would be socialism, communism. And let's continue.
Development between feudalism and socialism. We've also talked a bit about capitalism's relations of production. Workers sell their labour power through wage labour, and capitalists purchase this in order to make more profits. From this, we can build a basic understanding of capitalism. Capitalism is a system of private ownership of the means of production for the purpose of extracting profits or surplus value produced by wage labourers. Now, how did we get here? Well, our old friend Karl Marx said that this system becomes inevitable from the moment there is a free sale by the labourer himself of labour power as a commodity. But it is also only from then onwards that commodity production is generalised and becomes the typical form of production. It is only from then onwards that, from the first, every product is produced for sale and all wealth produced goes through the sphere of circulation. Now, under earlier systems like feudalism, there was also a limited amount of simple commodity production, like if you grew some food for yourself but you weren't able to eat it all so you sold the leftovers. But this production under earlier systems was generally for use. Capitalism developed out of feudalism as commodity production started small but then grew with the rise of the bourgeoisie and became generalised as the typical form of production. To the extent that commodity production, in accordance with its own inherent laws, develops further into capitalist production, the property laws of commodity production change into the laws of capitalist appropriation. As we see this transition from feudalism to capitalism, We also see massive legal changes in society that allow for the free trade of both the means of production and labour power, which itself now becomes a commodity. The capitalist epoch is characterised by the fact that labour power, in the eyes of the worker himself, takes on the form of a commodity which is his property. His labour consequently takes on the form of wage labour. It is only from this moment that the commodity form of the products of labour becomes universal. So when you've got private ownership of the means of production, when you've got generalised commodity production, and when you've got capitalists making profits from workers through wage labour, you've got capitalism. And that can manifest in more of a free market oriented form like in the United States, or a slightly more controlled social democratic form like in Norway. Importantly, governments can and do engage in capitalism themselves, including commodity production, the extraction of surplus value through wage labour, etc. There's a common myth that socialism is when big government does things, making capitalism the opposite of that. But if that were the case, then Saudi Arabia would be socialist with its nationalised oil company and the large public sector. But, as we know, Saudi Arabia is, well, an absolute monarchy that in many ways embodies capitalism taken to many of its natural conclusions. Now, it was mentioned earlier that there are various stages of historical development. But within each stage, there are also various sub-stages. Within capitalism, we can identify three main substages. Mercantile capitalism that emerged from feudalism and primarily focused on controlling national and international trade. Industrial capitalism, which was dominant in the time when Karl Marx himself was writing and was characterised by a much sharper division of labour, heavy machinery, factories and so on. And imperialist capitalism, where capitalism has developed to such a point where capitalist monopolies rule the world. This is the substage that we still live under at the moment. We could go another level deeper again and talk about neoliberal capitalism as a stage within imperialist capitalism, a substage of a substage. But at that point we're mostly just splitting hairs as the underlying mechanisms of imperialist capitalism remain fundamentally unchanged. And don't worry, we're going to talk about all those underlying mechanisms in a later video dedicated specifically to imperialist capitalism. You're going to be sick of hearing about imperialism by the end of this series, if not already. Today we've looked at the meaning of capitalism as a system predicated on private ownership of the means of production, generalised commodity production, and wage labour, through which capitalists make profits from workers. We've also looked at the three main stages of capitalism: mercantile, industrial, and imperialist. We also addressed the idea that capitalism is when small government, freedom, and democracy, which, no. So much no. Next up, what is socialism? Thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you found it.
No, so much no. All right, I think we've come to our last video in this short stream. Let's get to that video now. Now, this final video is what is socialism? Maybe we'll look at the social class. Let's see if we'll look at what is social class. I can't run into that next stream, so I think I might do that 7th episode in the beginning of the next one. So let's go ahead and watch this final one. It's about 8 minutes long. Let's listen.
Sweden, Portugal, Stalin's USSR, Mao's China, revolutionary Catalonia, Norway. All have been described as socialist at different times and by different people. And this causes a lot of problems for us when we're trying to understand what the word socialist means. The word has about 20 different meanings, depending on who you're talking to, generally loosely connected to the idea of worker ownership of the means of production. But it's important to state from the outset that there is no one perfect, universally accepted definition of the word. It's always been a contested term. Following on from this, I can't claim to speak on behalf of social democrats, anarchists, or any kind of right-winger, but what I can do is provide a Marxist-Leninist and Marxist-Leninist Maoist understanding of it. So, let's find out. What is it from our perspective? Welcome to Socialism 101, a series designed to help educate people with no prior knowledge on the basics of socialism and communism from an explicitly Marxist-Leninist and Marxist-Leninist Maoist perspective with short and easily digestible videos. If this sounds interesting to you, then go ahead and hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell below. First and foremost, we view socialism as a stage of historical development, specifically the transitional stage between capitalism and communism. Earlier in the writings of Karl Marx, what we're now calling socialism would have been referred to as lower stage communism, while what we've been referring to as communism would have been higher stage communism. It's really
this is a very important point. If you do go into the his study guide, and you begin to read, because you're not going to see socialism in this way, not until later, like Lenin. But you're not going to see this word if you start to read about communism or study communism from Karl Marx. So you're going to see lower stage communism and upper stage is what you're going to begin to see. So just making sure you understand before we go through the entire video. Let's go.
It's really from Lenin onwards that we arrive at this tidier separation of the historical stages into capitalism, then socialism, then communism. Now, as socialism is a transitional stage, it's a bit unstable and prone to backsliding into capitalism. In the socialist transition, you're either continuing the class struggle and moving forward to communism, which we call the socialist road, or you're abandoning the class struggle and backsliding into capitalism, the capitalist road. Importantly, you may reach a stage where you find that you've eliminated classes on paper within your country. Everyone is now legally working class or proletarian. But what about the illegal capitalists on the black market? What about those who've joined your leading communist party but have lingering capitalist ambitions and are working to restore capitalism? What about the bourgeoisie in the surrounding capitalist countries that are trying to destabilize your socialist country? Well, to combat these, we not only continue the class struggle under socialism, but in fact intensify it. And this class struggle continues until classes have been abolished all over the world, when we can finally move to a fully communist, stateless, classless, moneyless society. As much as we'd love to just hit the big red global communism switch, that process doesn't happen overnight, but is much more likely to take centuries to fully complete. Now, let's dial it back a bit and look at the main features of socialism from the ML and MLM perspective. We can loosely group these features under three main categories: the economic aspect, the political aspect, and the transformational aspect. Economically, socialist countries operate under the instruction from each according to their ability to each according to their work.
This is a very, if you're new to communism, socialism, this phrase here is used a lot, or you will use this phrase a lot. From each according to their ability, to each according to their work. So let's see here. Very, very funny here. Thank you for the super chat. Disco Phil J, here is my tuition for class today. Thanks for helping my political views evolve. So appreciated. Absolutely. Thank you. A good thing. I hope I didn't miss any other ones here. I don't think I did. Thank you for that. Let's continue with the video.
You see the transformation from a capitalist society led by the anarchy of the market with its boom and bust cycles into a rationally planned, centralized economy. This, of course, eliminates problems like wasteful overproduction as we move towards primarily producing for use rather than production for profit. We see the transformation from private ownership that means production to public or state ownership, including nationalizations and collectivizations.
Now, imagine the natural resources that we would still have, or the abundance, if we were producing for use. You get what I'm saying? If we're producing for use, not for profit, there's an overproduction of food. There's an overproduction of a lot of things, clothing, because it's being produced to put in stores instead of being produced to send directly to people that need them. So that is a key part to me.
Collectivizations, under which you gradually see more direct worker control over the means of production develop over time. You also, of course, have cooperative ownership. And the trajectory for all of these is to progressively transition to the full communal ownership of communism. However, and this is important, this can only help to advance us closer towards a stateless, classless, moneyless society when it's led by the political power of the working class. Which brings us to the second category, the political aspect. Under capitalism, we live under the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie. This means that the capitalists are in charge, that they're the ruling class, whether that's under a liberal democracy or under outright fascism. Socialist societies are politically led by the working class and its genuine representatives. This is called the dictatorship of the proletariat. Yeah, I know, we need a less scary sounding name for it. This is why you'll usually hear us saying something like working class governance instead these days. The governing body must at all times act in the genuine interests of the working class. How do we ensure that the leading Communist Party doesn't just become a group of power-hungry elitists disconnected from the masses, not representing the people? Easy. The leading party stays firmly connected to the masses through the mass line organisational methods. And if the leading party steps out of line, taking the people down a reactionary path, then the empowered masses rise up against the party itself as part of the cultural revolution that sets it back on the revolutionary communist path. Alright, maybe we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves here. Links below for more on those. Finally, the third category is the transformational aspect. Socialism is the transitional stage between capitalism and communism. At all times, the society must be progressing from capitalism towards a stateless, classless, moneyless society. This includes transformation of the relations of production by abolishing the capitalist class, advancing towards the full abolition of the commodity form, winding down production for exchange and phasing out the capitalist law of value, progressively abolishing markets, eliminating wage labour, abolishing private property, moving production to public or cooperative property of the dictatorship of the proletariat, and eventually fully communal property as the capitalist class is abolished, and maintaining the socialist road to communism through cultural revolution, or rather, multiple cultural revolutions. Some, including Marx himself, also talk about the need for labour vouchers rather than money as we currently understand it in this transformational period, so as to prevent circulation, that MCM capitalist circuit discussed in a previous video, the free purchase of labour power and the means of production, etc. When assessing whether or not a country is socialist, we have to consider all three of these aspects: the economic, the political, and the transformational. If it doesn't satisfy all three, we don't consider it socialist. Even societies under the political leadership of a dictatorship of the proletariat that are actively building and transforming themselves towards socialism aren't necessarily socialist until they've also satisfied the economic aspects. See, for example, the new economic policy or NEP period of the USSR after the Bolshevik Revolution, which was state capitalist due to its economic structure before the USSR became actually socialist a number of years later. Likewise, there was a state capitalist period in China after the revolution, which declared the People's Republic of China in 1949 before it became properly socialist a number of years later. Today we've looked at the Marxist-Leninist and Marxist-Leninist Maoist understanding of socialism. It's comprised of three equally important and often overlapping aspects: the economic, the political, and the transformational. Without satisfying all three, we are unable to accurately describe society as socialist by this Marxist understanding. That being said, there are certain cases which are extremely clear-cut examples of socialism, like the post-NEP USSR, while there are also many other societies where the legitimacy is genuinely socialist according to these three categories is still fiercely debated among MLs and MLMs. Next up, we'll be diving back into the relations of production as we finally flesh out the answer to the question, what is class? Thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you found it useful in one way or another. I am struggling financially at the moment, so please consider...
I'm going to leave that up. I'll put it on because he needs that help. I think YouTube is really thrashing his channel, so severely being thrashed. So that's going to be the last video in this first series, or I'm sorry, in this first video of why communism. We're also going to be moving to what is Marxism. And I think starting with that next video, which is class, what is class? It's listed as what is social class. But what is class, we will start with when we talk about what is Marxism. Oops, shoot. Let me try to pause this here so I can show you in the list here. So we ended here. So let me recap, sorry. I think this is on the screen. Let me make sure. Yes. I can slightly enlarge this. There we go. All right, so we did why communism. We did what is communism. We did what is a mode of production. The difference between personal and private property. What is capitalism? And finally, we just ended the video, what is socialism? So we're going to be covering what is Marxism. That'll be the title of the stream and video. But we're going to start with the what is class, then we're going to go in what is Marxism, what is the dialectic materialism, what is historic materialism, what is contradiction. I think that'll be then these two here. Utopian socialism and scientific socialism, and then Marx's law of value. That'll be the next sort of stream. I don't know when I'm going to get to that, but that'll be the next in this series, the Socialism 101 series with Marxist Paul. So thanks again to Marxist Paul for providing those videos. I'm going to check out a couple of comments, but I do want to jump off soon so that we can have a 30-minute break before our audience will be coming back, or you guys and gals and people, humans will be coming back, proletariat, coming back for our next video, which is auditing progressive Democrats. So make sure you come back for that. And let me do a couple announcements here. How do I do this? Okay, let's stop sharing there. Let's share a different one. Okay. So a couple of things here. We're going to be doing NBA on RBN. So this icon or this graphic is a play on the NBA on TNT. We got the Afro with the shades guy, RBN. So yeah, let me read the caption. NBA talk along with analysis of the latest off-the-court stories of the aspiring Black capitalist class and their masters team owners. Talking about what happens between the lines and off the court. And another announcement here. Just want to make sure people know. In another episode of this series, I Am Revolution, we also going to be covering, I think this is probably the next one we're going to do, will be Che Guevara. So this here is I Am Revolution also. So we'll be covering that. I think that might be the last one, but let me check. That I just kind of wanted to shout out today. This is the one we just did. Why is communism? So perfect. I think I got all of them, and we're gonna leave today. Let's see what historical video I can find today. Let's go to my page, and let's see, what do I have here? We played that one earlier. That's Rome. Let's end with Michael Perinelli. Oh, I'm sorry, Marco. I'm thinking of something else. Michael Parenti. So let's go with one of his videos as an outro. So let me prep that, and then I'm gonna read a couple of your comments, a couple of announcements, and then get out of here for a short break. Hang on a second here. Short break before we come back for our next stream. So let's check out the comments really quickly. Just a couple comments. Mao, serve the people. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, Che. Y'all, Cedos. If you're talking about Paul Robeson. Paul Marx. I'm sorry, you're talking about Marxist Paul. Yes, he does too. Good to see you have plans. Yes. Thank you, CJ. I am showing this to everybody. Awesome. Thank you for that. Thank you. All right, so I think we'll end it there. Michael Parenti. And let's go.
Of capitalism that it must expand. A no-growth capitalism, as some of our more naive ecologists have argued for, is a contradiction in terms. The reason you invest is to accumulate. And your accumulation of capital has no purpose or meaning unless you can mix it with labor to yet increase your wealth further. And of course, you use large sums of it for personal consumption and for political power and for control of your culture and for that wonderful, good, happy life that you so like. Now, that nature of expansion really affects the nature of, it's an important imperative, because it means capitalism also can never stay home. It goes abroad. If you ever saw the film Controlling Interest, there's a corporate president who says, those corporations that stayed regional in New England years ago and decided not to go national, we can't even remember their names. They died. We had to go national. And those of us who are now national know we have to go international. We have to invest abroad. So one of the laws of capitalist motion and development is this inexorable expansion. And that means expansion into an expropriation of the third world. A process that's been going on for about 400 years, perpetrated by the Portuguese, the Spaniards, the Dutch, the Belgians, the French, the English, and most recently, most successfully, most impressively, by the Americans. That is, the Americans, that is, by the ruling classes of these countries, not by the ordinary people. The ordinary people simply paid the costs of empire. The ordinary people simply sent their sons off to die on the plains of India or in the jungles of the Congo or in Latin America, wherever else. But that expropriation of the third world that's been going on for 400 years brings us to another revelation, namely that the third world is not poor. You don't go to poor countries to make money. There are very few poor countries in this world. Most countries are rich. The Philippines are rich. Brazil is rich. Mexico is rich. Chile is rich.